Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Eastern Area Planning Committee, which is one of 3 area-based planning committees of Dorset Council. Our area of remit covers the previous Purbeck District Council and most of the previous East Dorset District Council areas. For the benefit of the public, I am Councillor Tony Coombs, Chairman of this Area Planning Committee. We have several officers supporting us today. Ellie Lee, the Planning Case Officer for the Verwood application. Andrew Collins, Principal Planning Officer, who will be presenting the Litchett-Matravers application. Kim Cowell, Principal Planning Officer, who will be reading out the public representations. David Northover, the Committee Support Officer. And Phil Crowther, Solicitor. I would also like to thank the officers behind the scenes who are making today's virtual meeting possible. You're doing a grand job, team. So, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Council has had to put in place measures to enable the Council's decision-making processes to continue whilst keeping safe members of the public, councillors and council staff in accordance with the government's guidance on social distancing by applying new regulations for holding committee meetings from remote locations. This meeting is being live streamed to the public, and a copy of the recording of the meeting will be available on the website after the meeting. Public participation will take the form of written statements and not the normal public speaking to the committee. We will be following the agenda as set out in your pack. David Northover, do I have any apologies for absence?
Chairman, I haven't received any formal apologies for absence today.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go through the committee, do a roll call, and if you can please let me know that you are here. So, Vice Chairman Shane Bartlett.
Morning, Chairman.
Thank you. Alex Brenton.
Speak up a bit next time. Good morning. I'm here.
Cherry Brooks.
Good morning. I'm here.
Robin Cook. Robin, can you unmute your microphone, please?
Good morning, Chairman. Here.
Morning. Mike Dyer.
Good morning, Chairman. I'm here.
Morning. Beryl Ezard.
Good morning, I'm here.
Morning. Barry Gorringe. Barry, are you there?
Hello.
Unmute your morning.
Morning.
David Morgan.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear
Thank
me?
you. Yeah,
Good.
loud and clear. David Took.
Present.
Thank you. Bill Trite. John Worth.
Morning, Chair.
Morning. Okay, so moving on to declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination. Cherry Brooks, I understand you have something to say.
I do. On the Litchett-Matravers item, I was on a previous planning committee prior to this authority where I voted on a planning application, but that doesn't affect me having an open mind this morning.
Okay. That's lovely, thank you. Are there any other declarations at this time? Okay, I'll move on to item 3 on the agenda.
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, I was in a similar position with Councillor Cherry Brooks on the Purbeck District Council, and have the same sentiments about her, about this application. Thank you.
Okay, that's lovely. Are there any more declarations from any members of the committee?
Sorry, Chairman, could we just clarify the last councillor speaker, please?
That was Beryl Ezard.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more declarations, I shall now move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, and that was held on the 11th of March 2020. Members, can I approve, oh sorry, will you approve them as a true record? And as soon as obviously I can get into the offices, I will sign them as a true record. Is there any dissent?
Agreed.
Agree.
Agreed.
Agree.
Agreed.
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 Okay. Is
Yeah,
there any, is there, hold on please, committee, is there any dissent?
No.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Moving on now, public participation. Members of the public have been invited to submit written representations which are limited to 450 words. Members of Dorset Council who are not members of the committee and who wish to speak to the committee will be allowed to speak to the committee. All requests should have been registered with Democratic Services by 8:30 on Thursday the 7th of May. David Northover, are there any representations received from the public that do not relate to matters on the agenda today?
None received.
Thank you, David. I will now move on to the schedule of planning applications. We have 2 applications before us today. Officers, have there been any requests for deferrals or withdrawals, please?
No, Chairman, there have been no requests for withdrawals or deferrals.
Thank you very much, Kim. Officers, when you speak, can I ask you to just confirm your name, please, unless I'm bringing you into the conversation. So, background information relating to the planning applications before us today have been available for inspection by members prior to the meeting, covering consultations, objections and representations, as well as the East Dorset and Purbeck local plans and the council's related policies. As we are doing this virtually, there are a few ground rules. So in each case, I will invite the case officer to introduce the item. Members of the public, planning agents, applicants and town and parish councils have been invited to make written submissions, and these will be read out by Kim Cowell, Principal Planning Officer, who has not been involved with either of the applications before us today. These will be read out in the following order: public against the application, public in support, the applicant or agent, town and parish council, and then local member. And the time will be limited to 15 minutes in total for each application. Following the public participation section of every item, I will ask the officers if there are any salient points that they wish to clarify. I will then ask members if there are any questions or comments to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to comment. In order to run the meeting, may I request that members of the committee direct any remarks and questions through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn. Requests to speak need to be made via the chat facility, as we have no visual request to vote facility. Please keep your microphones on mute when you're not speaking to maintain audio quality. And at the end of the debate, for transparency, I will take the vote by roll call, and the vote will be recorded in the minutes if 3 or more members make the necessary request. And if you wish to have a recorded vote, please do that before I carry out the vote on the application. The last thing I need to say before we launch into the presentations is that due to the technology, there may be a short gap whilst the presentations are loaded. So the screens will go a little bit strange. So the first application before us today is 320-0178, a full application, single-storey extension to the southwest elevation and alterations to the ramp and railings at Verwood Library, 1 Manor Road. Ellie Lee, you're going to take us through the presentation.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. I am Ellie Lee, the case officer for this application, which is for a single-storey extension to the southwest elevation of Verwood Library, with alterations to the existing steps and railings. The existing steps were incorrectly described in the description as a ramp, as they are actually existing stairs. So the description has now been amended with the word ramp being changed to steps in the correction. The application site is located at 1 Manor Road in the urban area and is within the Verwood Town Centre boundary and a primary shopping area. The library is situated to the northwestern end of the town, to the south of the B3081. To the rear of the site is Potter's Wheel car park. So on this slide, the application site is annotated in red. As you can see, the red square on the screen, and the blue line indicates Dorset Council land ownership. The main entrance to the library, which is accessible and DDA compliant, is via the rear single-storey part of the building, as annotated on this slide. And this can be the library can be accessed via the public car park to the rear or from the side of the library via the Manor Road access. Adjacent to the site, to the northeast, is a church, and to the southwest side are 2-storey residential dwellings. This slide shows the existing plans and elevations of the existing detached library building. The red boxes on this slide indicate the location of the proposed works. And on the side southwestern elevation, there is an existing secondary access door, steps and a toilet. As previously mentioned, the main entrance to the library is from the rear southeastern elevation, as annotated on the plan and the elevation to the top right on this slide. This slide shows the proposed plans and elevations with a single-storey toilet extension with a lean-to roof. The reconfiguration to the existing steps and railings is to allow for the extension that is proposed. It's evident from the site visit that the stairs are to be replaced with stairs, and this is why the description has been amended to reflect this. A ramp would take up too much space near the existing secondary access door on the side elevation. The access to the proposed toilet extension would be internally via the main entrance to the library, which is DDA compliant. Materials for the proposal are to match existing, and the toilet extension creates an accessible toilet within the library and is of public benefit. The proposed works are of modest scale and form and have a limited impact on the appearance when viewed from the public realm. Just for clarification, members, the existing and proposed part plans are shown on this slide, side by side. As you can see, the only change in relation to the stairs is that they are to be replaced with stairs that are rotated 180 degrees to accommodate the single-storey toilet extension. So instead of accessing the steps from the southeast, they are proposed to be accessed from the northwest, but in the same location. The accessible toilet extension will include a full dock en suite, and the access door to the toilet will be DDA compliant. This slide shows some of the case officer site photos, with photos 1 to 3 showing views of the library from the other side of Manor Road. Photo 1 with the church to the left, to the northeast, and photos 2 and 3 showing the semi-detached dwellings to the right, to the southwest. Photos 4 and 6 show the existing steps as they are at the moment to the secondary side elevation. And photos 4, 5, 6 and 7 show the well-established southwest side boundary between the library and the adjoining house, with no windows in the adjacent single-storey part of that property. And if you can see my mouse, this is the bit that I'm referring to in photograph 4, the single-storey part on the boundary. and that's where the works are closest to. So moving on, in summary, the development is acceptable in principle as there is no change of use and the proposal is in a sustainable location. The proposal is of public benefit as it creates an accessible toilet within the library and alters an existing secondary step access to the building. The design and general visual impact is considered to be acceptable, and the scale, layout, design and landscaping respects the context of the site. There is no significant harm to neighbouring residential amenity as there is no change of use. The access and parking provision is considered acceptable and is not harmed by the proposal. Verwood Town Council have no objection, and there are no material considerations which would warrant refusal of this application. Therefore, the officer recommendation of this application is for approval with conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Kim Cowell, do we have any public speakers on this item?
Kim Cowell, no, there are no public speakers on this item, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, my first speaker on this application is Vice Chairman Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to the officer for such a well-presented case. This planning application is obviously coming to us, the committee, due to it being a local government asset, and so for transparency, we will determine the planning decision on that in public. I'm pleased to see there was no third-party representation or any objections to this planning application, and in particular that there's no objection from Bartlett Town Council. I think the planning proposal enhances the amenity and the asset, and it will improve the working conditions for the staff, and it will be of benefit to the public. And as there is no material considerations to be taken into account to refuse the plan application, then I would recommend that we approve the plan application as laid out in the officer's report and subject to any conditions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Shane. I have two speakers. The first one is Councillor Alex Brenton.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. I just would like to ask the officers, bearing in mind it is a disabled toilet, and I know there's already a main access in, was there no attempt to see if they could fit in a ramp to this exit, because it would sort of just seem to be a smoother way of doing things? It doesn't have to be desperately wide because it can go along the side of the building. I just wondered why it's not included.
Ellie Lee, case officer here. The proposal is to replace the steps with the steps, and the main access to the library is to the rear. So it would make sense for the access to the toilet extension to be via the main library access rather than a secondary door. Thank you.
Councillor Brenton, does that answer your question?
Not particularly, Chairman. It's just in a world where we're trying to increase facilities, if you were in Verwood and needed access to a disabled toilet, I would have thought rather than trolling through the library, this could be a secondary use. Okay. It would seem to me logical to have put it as a ramp, as an improvement. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Ellie, can you go back on the presentations to the one that shows the site, please? Okay. Is there one that goes a little bit further to the north? Okay. For your information, Alex, I'm one of the local members, And if you see on the line drawing, there is a road called Manor Way. That is pedestrianised. Immediately to the north of that is Ferret Green, and there are public toilets situated on Ferret Green, and there is a disabled toilet there. So this would be a secondary disabled toilet for members of the public that are visiting the library. Does that help?
I have no objection. Oops, it just seemed an odd omission not to have bumped up the application to put in a ramp. That's all. It's just a comment.
Yeah, the secondary exit is a staff entrance rather than a public entrance.
Okay.
I'm going to move on now. Cherry Brooks, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. I was unaware that it was a staff entrance. I thought it was a secondary public entrance. So thank you for that clarification. I like the design of the toilet, but I too am worried about the ramp. I think we have a legal duty to look at providing ramps or facilities for people with disabilities, and not all disabilities are wheelchairs. So, you know, walking the extra however 100 yards or something to the front might pose a problem for some people. And I'm not happy about reinstating steps. That's the only issue I have with this application.
Okay, Councillor Ezard, do you wish to speak as well?
Yes, I do. I think that actually I've got a similar situation, which I reiterate, Councillor Brenton and Councillor Brooks. I think is that the only a fire exit apart from the front door? In which case, I think having a ramped exit would be a good idea. I'm not familiar with the building, so I don't know if there's any other exits, but I do believe that taking away the ramp is a mistake. I do request that perhaps we can think about putting the ramp back in, even though it may be a staff exit. I mean, in an emergency, it could be used as a fire exit, in which case for disabled or people who have difficulties with walking, it would be an advantage. Thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. I have two more speakers lined up. However, Ellie, do you want to come back and give some clarification, please?
So the slide I put up on the screen shows the whole floor plan to the left, and you've got the main entrance here, and there are various different doors. You've got doors to Manor Road there. There's other secondary exits and entrances to the building in terms of safety. The whole building is DDA compliant, so if you're in the library, visiting the library, and you wish to use the toilet, it's well within a good distance of the main bit of the library. In terms of the steps are existing, so there hasn't a ramp. It was an incorrect description of the application. So they are existing steps, and they're proposed to be steps. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to move on now. John Worth, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd just like to reiterate that the officer did point out that the building was DBA compliant, and therefore the library fulfills those requirements and doesn't need a secondary ramp. And as this is a staff entrance only, I see little point in going to the extra expense of putting ramps in when there is perfectly adequate access from the front of the library.
Thank you. Councillor Took, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, 2 points. First of all, I agree that there is a trick been missed here to enable access via a ramp to this secondary access. I'm not convinced that the fact that it's a staff entrance makes any difference. If anything, that would discriminate against disabled staff, which I think is a bad thing. However, we are here to approve or reject a planning application as it stands. And as far as I'm aware, we have two choices. We can either approve this or we can reject it. I don't think this is a reason to reject the plan, but what I would do is suggest that another officers look further into it and perhaps bring forward fairly quickly another plan that replaces those steps with a ramp, because I think that would be an excellent plan. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Cook, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I do. I would be more concerned. I've listened to what's been said, but I'd be more concerned if the Verwood Town Council had made some representation on the lines of what we've heard. I think the people of Verwood are probably best placed to comment on that. Is their library and their access, and I'm happy to support. I think we've had a proposal, haven't we, from Councillor Bartlett? Did he propose the? Yeah, well, I would be happy to second his proposal with the presentation as it is. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. John Worth, you wanted to come back. Is there anything further you wish to say?
No, Robin's seconded the proposal, which is what I was going to say, so we could move this item forward. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any more speakers on this application? Okay, in that case, I will move to the vote. It has been proposed by Councillor Bartlett and seconded by Councillor Cook. So, going down the list, Shane Bartlett.
Approved, Madam Chairman.
Alex Brenton.
Approved, Madam Chairman.
Cherry Brooks.
Approved, Chairman.
Robin Cook.
Approved, Chairman.
Mike Dyer.
Approved, Chair.
Beryl Ezard.
Approved, Chairman.
Barry Gorringe.
Approved, Chair.
David Morgan.
Approved, Madam Chairman.
David Took.
Approved, Madam Chairman.
Bill Trite is not in the meeting. John Worth.
Approved, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. As is my usual way, I do not intend to vote on applications unless I have to. So therefore, from what I can see, the voting is unanimous and the application is granted. Thank you all very much. We will now move to the second of the applications on our agenda today, and that is 6/2019-0585, erection of 9 dwellings and associated works at the former Royal British Legion Club, Wimborne Road, Litchett, Matravers. And Andrew Collins is going to take us through this one.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. Andrew Collins here. I'm Principal Planning Officer and Case Officer this application. This is an application. This application was deferred from the 11th of March 2020 Eastern Area Planning Committee by officers, and no debate has taken place on this application. This application is considered by the Eastern Area Planning Committee due to a request following the schema delegation referral to allow consideration on the impacts on the Greenbelt. This is an application for 9 dwellings on the former Royal British Legion site. This is exactly the same proposal as 6/2018/0022, which was dismissed at appeal. A smaller scheme for 7 dwellings has been granted with no incursion into the Greenbelt, and works have started on site. During this presentation, I'll explain why there being material planning considerations to come to a different conclusion now. The site is located on the eastern side of Litchmer Travers on Wimborne Road. The A350 is located to the east of the site, and this is former East Dorset district. This plan clearly shows the former club. The brown area being the settlement boundary for the site, and the green area at the back here being the location of within the designated green belt. Lions Court is a residential development to the west of the site, highlighted on the cursor on screen. The site is proposing to retain the existing access, and highways have no objections and provides a shared surface into the site. These are older photos taken from 2018 showing the site boarded up, but clearly shows the former access. This is the former building on the site, which is now being demolished. And this is its relationship with the Lions Court development located to the west of the site, with these white dwellings you can see in the plan on the photos taken. This is the views to and from the greenbelt. So the bottom slide is within the site looking towards the rear boundary where the trees are located, and that's the end of the site. The former scrub area is in the greenbelt, and the top slide is looking back towards the Wimborne Road. These are photos that are taken in March 2020, showing plot 1 under construction. And these are further photos also taken from March 2020 with a view from Litchmer Travers from Wimborne Road, showing the dwellings under construction. For clarification, these are the floor plans of the former Royal British Legion building, which has subsequently been demolished. Sorry, do apologise. This is exactly the same scheme as refused under application 6/2018-0022. This application was refused on the basis of impact upon design and character of the area, and however, officers of the opinion that there are now material planning considerations as to why it is now acceptable, as there are materially different circumstances. Previously, the proposals were considered under previously developed land, and under this exception, there's a requirement to assess the proposals on the impact on the openness of the greenbelt. This current application is considered under another exception, infilling. There is no requirement to consider openness under this exception. It's also noted, as it's seen on this screen here, that there are 2 further applications in 2018 and 19 for the erection of the 7 dwellings allowed on the site, which omitted the area of the greenbelt. In relation to the this is the application site here, and this here is a proposed allocation in the emerging Purbeck local plan. This is details of the proposal proposes 150 new dwellings within Litchmer Travers, identified in the blue shaded areas. This clearly shows it in greater detail. This area here of particular relevance is the land immediately to the south of the site. This site is known as land at Blaney's Corner. Following the local plan inspector's letter, weight can now be given to this emerging policy as the arguments put forward for Greenbelt release were accepted. Councils can give weight to emerging policies under paragraph 48 of the National Planning Policy Framework as detailed in on page 38 of the officer report. As such, with housing proposed to the south, this could be considered to be limited infilling between the proposed site and the site proposed to the rear. This is the approved plan that was shown and which is currently under construction. It's quite clear that the area to the south of the site has been omitted, and this is the area of Greenbelt. And also you notice that there are 7 dwellings on this site. It's now proposed to have 9 dwellings on the site, with dwellings 6 and 7 being the new dwellings, and these are the ones that are being considered today. For completeness, I'll now go through the dwellings already granted permission and are under construction. Plot 1, whereas we saw in the previous photos, is substantially under construction. 2, 3 and 4 locating down the eastern boundary. Plot 5, plot 6. So the 2 new dwellings are plot number 7. Plot number 7 is a new dwelling for consideration, is a 4-bedroom detached property located at the southern end of the site. Plot 8 is also for consideration, and this is a 3-bedroom detached dwelling, as can be seen from on the slide. Plot 9 has previously been approved and has some oriel window to avoid overlooking, as shown on the details there, and it was proposed to have a window facing the neighbouring property. So as such, this represents a condition is proposed to which replicates the previously imposed condition on the grant of permission previously. These are the proposed street scenes, 1 to 6 being at the top here, showing the ones already under construction down the side, and units 7 and 7, 8 and 9, 6 to 9, I apologise, 6 to 9 located at the bottom here are the new ones. So the new ones is unit 7 and 8, which I'll highlight and zoom in a bit, which are these 2 properties here, 7 and 8. So they're the 2 new dwellings that have been considered under this planning application. A landscaping bund is proposed along the eastern boundary. Previously, this was raised as a concern by members under application in 2018. However, the planning inspector had no issue with this and has been reintroduced into this scheme. Previously approved, there was just a landscaping strip down the side there. So in conclusion, this application is considered to be limited infilling within the Greenbelt. 7 dwellings have already been approved and are under construction. Paragraph 48 allows local planning authorities to give weight to emerging policies subject to the stage of preparation, extent of unresolved objections, and the degree of consistency with the NPPF. The examination has been undertaken in relation to the emerging Purbeck local plan, and we've had the inspector's letters back in relation to that. In relation to that, the local plan inspector accepts the Greenbelt release. Scale, design, and impact and character of the appearance of the area. This makes the best use of previously developed land and will result a positive contribution to landscape with increased planting along the eastern side. Impacts upon living conditions of the occupying and neighbouring properties is acceptable. Highways it is acceptable with sufficient visibility displays being proposed. And biodiversity is acceptable, subject condition relating to the biodiversity mitigation plan, which has previously been approved. And also flood risk and drainage is considered to be acceptable. It is noted that Litchfield-Matravers Parish Council raised an objection to the scheme as detailed on page 31 of the officer report. No further comments have been received from them following the submission of the planning inspector and appeal inspector's letter. Thank you very much, and is proposed to recommend approval subject to conditions and informatives. Conditions and informatives relate to time limit, approved plans, specific materials for the 2 new dwellings, the details relating to a proportionally land condition, surface water details, tree protection methods, detailed landscaping details, biodiversity mitigation plan, and the detail of the windows relating to plot 9, access and turning. Informatives to cover SIL, the plans, highways and guidance on drainage has also been proposed. Thank you very much, Chairman. And that ends my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm now going over to Kim Cowell. Do we have any representations from the public?
Kim Cowell here, Chairman. Yes, we've got 2 representations that I will read out. The first one is from the public, an objection, and the letter has been sent in by D.N. Wood and C.J. Wood from 2 Lions Court, adjacent to the site. The exact application was submitted to Purbeck District Council and turned down in 2019. The appeal against this decision was then taken by the Planning Inspectorate, who overturned the appeal. According to procedure, as we understand it, the applicant had 6 weeks from the date of the decision to appeal against the appeal decision. This was not done to my knowledge. In this case, we are not sure why Dorset Council allowed this exact application to go forward. Surely, if it's been turned down by an inspector, it is within the Council's remit to refuse it. Any issues with this decision need to stay with the Planning Inspectorate and not be resubmitted in the exactly same form with no material changes. The accompanying 4-page justification written by the agents of the applicant is not sufficient grounds on which to base any decision, as it does not deal with this earlier appeal decision. This piece of land has never been discussed in the emerging local plan. The emerging local plan has undergone rigorous local consultation, and that piece of land has not been included in this public process. This application, we hope, will be turned down on that basis. The second representation is on behalf of Ken Park, the agent, and I'll now read their submission to the committee. Good morning, members. Thank you for this opportunity to make a representation to you. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicants to support the application. This application is similar to an application determined in 2018, refused at committee against an officer recommendation for approval. The site was occupied by the derelict former Litchfield-Matravers Royal British Legion Social Club with car park and associated amenity grounds. The majority of the site was within the settlement boundary, but a small section was within the greenbelt. The proposed development sought to put residential development within those elements within the settlement boundary, and the greenbelt section was proposed to form residential gardens for some of the properties. Despite there being no objection on greenbelt terms, and despite the inspector being content with all other aspects of the proposed development, he did dismiss the appeal on the consideration that the use of the former amenity space as residential garden would result in harm to the greenbelt. Your officers have set out within the report that the small area of greenbelt land forms part of the wider development and thus is part of an infill residential scheme within a village. It is considered, therefore, as a matter of course to be appropriate development, which by definition is not harmful to the greenbelt. The inspector reached his conclusion based on a misunderstanding as to how the land had been and how it could be used and arranged. Your officers have now correctly undertaken that assessment within the officer's report and demonstrate that there is no difference between what is being proposed and how the land could lawfully be utilised in any event. Indeed, officer conclusions are that the proposals will have less impact on openness. Officers also point out that land to the south and surrounding the element of greenbelt is also proposed to be allocated for housing. The consequences of this land being allocated is that it will be removed from the greenbelt, and the small parcel of greenbelt land, the subject of this application, would be surrounded by residential development on all sides, and therefore would not meet any of the requirements of greenbelt land. The land is therefore better utilised as residential gardens. Essentially, this small element of land will remain undeveloped, but will provide usable garden for a residential development considered acceptable in all other regards and in a manner which does not conflict with greenbelt policy. The applicants therefore reasonably and respectfully request that members support their officer recommendation and issue a grant of planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Are there any comments that officers wish to make on the points raised in the representations by the public?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Andrew Collins again. Obviously, the letter of representation from the neighbour, Miss Wood, referred to the previous decision and why we considered this application. There are rules and regulations to say that you do not have to accept an application if it's been considered at an appeal. However, we're under the impression that there are material changes and circumstances moving forward with the emerging Purbeck local plan. So as such, this application was considered and is considered for determination today. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm now going to turn to members of the committee, and my first speaker is Alex Brenton.
Hello. Thank you, Chair. I am one of the local members for this area, for Litchett Matravers, and can you hear me?
Yes, no? Loud and clear.
It's all right, I still seem to have a strange icon up. This area is, Litchett Matravers has tried very hard and has actually a parish plan and has considered lots of places that were suitable for building, and it has been working quite hard with the Purbeck plan. So they are not a NIMBY parish by any means, but I am concerned that this site is on the east, it's the eastern approaches to the village. And as you approach, it's very much, you know, a house, a gap, a house, a gap. This application, as it goes through, will become a block of housing as you drive in. This is not a gentle, this doesn't quite fit in with the neighbourhood aspect, with the sort of the style of the village. So that is a consideration. There is also this business of the agent or the applicant appears to be sort of pushing the village, the emerging Purbeck plan, even though it is only an emerging policy and it was only mentioned in sort of one sentence in the plan. They've already got a planning application for 7 dwellings, and if you look at the plan for 7 dwellings, it fits reasonably into the site. It's a mixture of houses or house sizes. If you look at the application now for 9, particularly for the dwellings 7 and 8, which are sort of the ones squeezed into the middle, it's doable. But what I would like to see or hear or be shown is what is the distance between those houses, particularly between 7 and 8 and 8 and 9, because on the plan it doesn't even show a car's width between them. So this is very much a question of squeezing it in. I don't think it's a particularly pleasant plan. It looks crowded. Yes, they can justify the fact that they then have a long narrow strip of garden at the back, but the actual approach of the whole site looks squashed, which doesn't seem suitable for this site, which is actually right on the edge of open country. The other issue is that it's down, according to the report, it's infilling. Well, it's infilling nothing, because the land at Blaney's Corner, which is the land sort of tucked up in the corner behind Lions Court and going up towards the back of the thatched cottage and the new Abbott's Way development, that is not infilled yet. There is no building there yet. There's no applications there. And all the houses that do front the Wimborne Road and the top end of the Wareham Road, they all face the road. There is no easy way in. It doesn't fit in with the village as it is, and it looks crowded and it looks stuck out on a limb. And it is not, by my definition, or most people's definition, infilling, because it's not between other buildings. It will be sticking out further. So I'm really not happy with this one, because it just seems like pushing us rather than actually giving us a nice plan, a good site to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. This application is for the 2 extra dwellings, taking the 7 already approved up to 9 on the site. So the other 7 will carry on being constructed regardless of our decision today, just so you're aware. My next speaker is Councillor Cherry Brooks.
Thank you. I'm not. I haven't got my head around the Greenbelt release and why that particular plot of land should now be released for gardens, because although the inspector has said that in principle she's going to agree to the release of the green belt where the proposed housing is for the local plan, this particular bit doesn't come within it, and I don't think that her ruling, when it comes, if it comes as we're expecting it, means that you can go carte blanche anywhere in the green belt and build. So is it going to actually end up completely surrounded by building, which the developers are saying is not within the sort of the bounds of the green belt? That's the issue that I've got on. I'm slightly uncomfortable about just assuming that we can then release another piece of land because we haven't agreed it, and it certainly wasn't put into the local plan. The other thing is that I do think that they've just crammed another 2 in to get some extra buildings in there, and I think the density of that site at 7 is probably where I would want to see it, and I think sticking another 2 in, which are clearly not got a lot of space for living, and have got these contentious back gardens, I'm uncomfortable with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to the case officer, Andrew. Can you please go back to the slide that shows the detail of the site with the new housing allocation next to it?
Hello, Andrew Collins here again. Is that the plan you're after, Councillor?
No, I think you need to go back
Right.
one more.
Okay, apologies.
No, you've gone too far now. Okay. That one. Can you zoom in? No. That one.
Sorry, that was the one that was approved.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah. No, I want you to show the detail of the plan with the blue marking on it of the new allocations.
Okay, so right, so and
that one. Now, can you zoom into the site, please?
All right. So for clarification, this is the Royal British Legion building which has been demolished. So at the moment, the building down here, the area of a green belt is through here. Does everybody see the hands? Is that clear enough, or do you want the laser pointer?
I think it's fairly clear.
Okay,
no one's
that's fine.
Coming up and saying no.
That's fine.
No, that's fine. So the area of green belt is across roughly where the hand is, going across there. So in relation to that, so Lions Court development is located to the west of the site. This is the allocation proposed to be to the south of the site. So therefore, there would be infilling relating on the northern, western and southern sides of this site.
And that presumably is why you have the change in material considerations, that you would have an isolated finger of green belt surrounded by development.
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay. Alex would like to know what the spacing is between dwellings 7, 8 and 9, as it does. Sorry, 7, 8 and 9, as it does look a little bit constrained.
Okay, yep, sure. The distance between 7 and 8 is 1.5 meters. The distance between 6 and 7 is 3.8 meters, and the distance between 8 and 9 is just over 1 meter. But we do have to remember, Chairman, is that this layout was considered previously by the inspectorate. So in the local, when the application was refused initially in 2018, the application was refused, and the inspector was happy in relation to the whole layout and the density of development for all 9 units. His only concern, and relating to the refusal of this application, related to the impact upon the green belt at that time, because we were considering previously developed lands. I'd be very concerned if we started to raise issues again over the density of developments when this has been previously considered by the planning inspectorate.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Alex,
Chairman,
you want to come in?
Oh, sorry. Come on. Chairman, can I, Kim Cowell here, it may assist members if I can just add to what Andrew has just said and to give the committee some additional background. The Purbeck District Council previously refused the application on account of the number of dwellings, scale, arrangement on the site, which they considered overdevelopment and harmful to the character and appearance of the area, and picking up on some of the points that Councillor Brenton previously raised. Looking at what the inspector said. The inspector, as part of the consideration, looked at the design issues, looked at those character issues, and concluded that the 9 dwellings, they considered that the proposed layout and density would be appropriate in this edge of village location. And the inspector went on to dismiss the appeal on Greenbelt grounds, but in relation to the layout and design of the 9, the inspector took no issue with those. I just thought I'd to reinforce that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Alex, did you want to say anything further on that point?
If I can, Chair, I just, even more so, if you look at the map that Andrew has put up of the map part of the land that is classed as the land at Blaney's Corner, you can see that directly at the back of the proposed development, there is a almost triangular piece of land, which actually you can see from the contours, and certainly you can see on the land, dips very drastically down. Now, as you approach the village from the east, you have actually a fairly, you can get a view of a fairly nice valley. You would then, with infilling proposed right up to that edge, plus losing the end of the Lions Court area or the Legion site, you would have a sort of block of buildings that would be quite intrusive on the skyline. I know this is thinking ahead of what we're looking at the moment, and I think we will have problems in future with inappropriate, heavy, chunky bits of development at that point. So I am not in favour of this, because I don't like the implication that we can infill the Legion site before it infills anywhere else. It doesn't actually at the moment bear any relation to the rest of the village. And I still think that 1 metre between 2 theoretically detached houses in an area where, as you could see, all the other houses on that road have substantial areas of ground around them. This is tight and squeezed and not appropriate for the end of a village. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on now. I've got quite a long list of speakers. The next speaker is David Took.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for a little clarification. As I understand it, the main problem with the original application was Greenbelt. However, we've got houses, the 2 houses currently which have planning permission, they have their gardens are in, as I understand it, is Greenbelt or was Greenbelt. The 2 proposed additional houses will also have gardens in that Greenbelt, and I'm trying to work out what the difference is in terms of infill of the in terms of Greenbelt visibility and openness to having 2 gardens in it or 4 gardens in it. And it strikes me that if there are gardens going into which already have planning permission on the two bottom corner ones, the 2 in the middle will make virtually no difference. Am I right in that, or is that? Yes. So there we've got gardens. So
and Andrew Collins here. Is it okay if I step in here, Councillor
Yes,
Coombs?
please.
No. You can see this was the approved plans for the 7 for the 7 dwellings. This site is completely within the settlement boundary. The area to the south here is in the green belt, and that area was completely omitted from the green belt. What was proposed is areas and gardens 6 and 7 would have gardens to the side here. This is where the 2 new dwellings are going to be located. Does that make it clear, Councillor Took?
It does. So the next slide that then shows those new dwellings, that then has those gardens. That's where those gardens are going into the green belt. Is that right?
That's correct.
So in terms of openness of the green belt, the existing approved plan doesn't impact the green belt, one would.
When you're considering impacts upon limited infilling under the NPPF and under the NPPF, there's not a requirement to consider the openness of the green belt. It's quite clear within the NPPF in relation to some aspects you don't have to consider openness as a particular issue. And in relating to limited infilling, it's quite clear that there isn't a requirement to consider openness, where there is a requirement to consider it under previously developed land.
Okay.
I think that
All right.
the reason for the difference is, Andrew, if you can just with the mouse on that slide, just show which area it has been allocated for housing in the emerging local plan.
Yeah, so it's just down around here and down here. So all this area to the south here.
Okay, and that's why it then becomes infilling rather than an argument about the openness of the green belt.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My next speaker is Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, the plan application we had before us today, we originally deferred until we were in a position where the local public plan had been approved and adopted by the inspectorate, and now that's been done, so it comes before us again. And as a statutory planning authority, we have to make best use of land, and the majority of the site is within the settlement boundary, and the housing will take place on previously developed land. The planning proposal has a limited impact on the green belt, in my opinion. And I know on page 37 of our report, many of the concerns that have been expressed by members today at the meeting, much of that I think is answered on page 37 in terms of the green belt and the impact of any development would have on it. And in the NPPF document, there are certain situations where the infilling within a village and its association with any potential harm into a green belt, it is laid out there into what can be done by a planning authority. And for me, I think that this proposal fulfills the requirements within the NPPF document. It allows limited infilling in villages on previously developed land, and where the new development would not have a greater impact on the green belt. And I think that's the case in this situation. I don't think there's any adverse detrimental impact on the green belt, Madam Chairman, and I would be happy to propose the plan application as laid out and subject to any planning conditions within the officer's report.
Thank you very much, Shane. Councillor Dyer, you are the next person to speak. Do you wish to second the proposal?
Chairman. Yes, I do. I will, Chairman. If I could just briefly say, this is in danger of turning into something slightly more complicated than it needs to be, because my view is that if we're going to try and refuse it on greenbelt grounds, would that refusal be defendable? And for the reasons that I won't repeat that Councillor Bartlett has just spoken of, I don't think it would be. So I will second the proposal to grant. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, it's Phil Crowther. Could I just make a quick comment in relation to what Councillor Bartlett said? It's just a matter of clarification, so members are clear that the local plan hasn't yet been adopted. It's still an emerging plan in an advanced state, and Mr. Collins has set out in his report and presentation the stage that it's got to. So it's not part of the adopted plan, and the weight that you can give it is a matter of planning judgment for the committee. And also the question of whether this amounts to infilling is a matter of planning judgment on which you have Mr. Collins' view. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, my next speaker is Robin Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm actually supportive of the scheme, but I do have some comments and a question also. I think it does tick a lot of the boxes. Councillor Bartlett mentioned page 37 of the report. If you look at that again, as I did earlier, and I have again now, yes, it does fit the criteria there quite well. It's doing what we're trying to do in a lot of cases with the village life. We're trying to put in perhaps smaller rather than larger sprawling developments. And there has been a little bit mentioned about what other developments might come forward. Well, that's maybe, but we're here to focus and make a decision on this one in isolation. So we have to focus on this one. I would prefer to have seen 8 properties rather than 9, because I do think the 2 are a little bit contrived and squeezed in there. I think a mention by the officer was there's a metre between 2 of the properties, which ain't much room, and it does tend to look a little bit tight. In terms of the gardens within the Greenbelt, this is not a new thing. We've had this happen in other applications before, but the question is, I've looked at the conditions and maybe I've missed it. Is there a condition, or can there be a condition about no further structures built in those gardens to preserve the Greenbelt? Because that would go some way towards mitigating possibly some fears about overdevelopment in Greenbelt land. So otherwise, quite supportive of it. Thank you.
Okay. I'll ask Andrew to respond to that request.
Hello, Andrew Collins here again. This was considered and discussed with the solicitor and Kim at the time, because obviously there isn't a requirement to consider openness relating to limited infilling. There wasn't considered to be that specific requirement to actually have that prescriptive requirement to remove PD rights for any outbuildings, etc. So therefore, as we're considering it under limited infilling criteria, it was considered that overall it would be unreasonable to impose a condition that moved any PD rights for any outbuildings. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do you also want to comment on the suggestion about 8 properties rather than 9?
Andrew, if that's right, Kim Cowell here. I'll come back on that. I'm just referring to the inspector's report who dismissed the earlier appeal. Looking at 9 units again, I'd just like to draw members' attention to what he said about the density of the scheme and the 9 units. He said the scheme would comply with the advice of the Design and Townscape SPDs and the LCA. And compliance would also be achieved as Section 11 and 12 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which require development to make effective use of land, building at densities which maintain the area's prevailing character and setting, and in ensuring the development is sympathetic to local character. He concluded in that scheme that it was appropriate, that the level of build that he took no issue with. And if we were to revisit that with that inspector's decision in mind, then I would be hesitant to open up any dialogue to try and reduce the numbers.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm now going to move on to the next speaker, John Worth.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Cook stole my thunder, because I was going to say exactly the same thing, that to preserve that area of Greenbelt as it's going to be gardens, maybe there could be conditional that there's no further development, i.e. extensions or any other building on that area, but we've already covered that one, so I'll move on.
Thank you very much. Cherry Brooks. Cherry, do you still wish to speak?
Thank you. Sorry, my cursor disappeared. I couldn't find the mic. If I could just pick up on that, the inspector's comment, whereby you should be on the edge of the villages, reflecting the density of neighbouring properties. I don't I mean, looking at this, that to me doesn't reflect the density of any neighbouring properties. I've had the confirmation on the use of the greenbelt land, and I'm more satisfied with that now. But I'm slightly worried that we're off on a red herring here, because the previous refusal was also based on design and density. I couldn't support something that had 1 metre between one house and another. It's just crammed in, and I too would have been happier to have seen one less dwelling in there. So I shall not be supporting this.
Okay, thank you. Does any member wish to speak that hasn't indicated that they wish to speak? Okay, the application has been recommended for approval and seconded. The proposer was Shane Bartlett and the seconder was Mike Dyer. I will now go through the roll call. So it is proposed to grant as per the officer recommendation. Shane Bartlett. Are you in favour?
Approved, Madam Chairman.
Alex Brenton.
Not approved, against on overcrowding issues.
Thank you. Cherry Brooks.
Same.
Refuse, please.
Robin Cook.
Grant, Madam Chairman.
Mike Dyer.
Grant, Chairman.
Beryl Ezard.
Approve.
Barry Gorringe.
Happy to support approval, Chairman.
David Morgan.
Approve, Madam Chairman.
David Took.
Approve.
Bill Trite is not in the meeting. John Worth.
Approved, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. David Northover, can you confirm the voting for me, please?
Chairman, I confirm that there were two against the recommendation and 8 for recommendation.
Okay. In that case, the application is granted. Okay, so moving back to the main agenda, members of the committee will be pleased to know that we do not have any urgent items, and therefore at 11:18 I will close the meeting. Thank you all very much for your attendance and making my job easier today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.